Hello everybody. I'd just like to share a few thoughts on Module 2, which you will be starting, I guess it's already started, and your due post or assignment is due next week. So let me make a few comments for you. So we're now into Module 2. Actually, let me open up the deadlines and dates here for a moment. So your comments and posts on Module 1 just came due today, so I'll start looking at those over the weekend. Now, there are 40 of you, so it'll take me a few days to work through all of your comments. And then you're into Module 2, so you should have been doing some reading. And actually, someone just texted me, and I realized someone had left a comment in the on-queue comment system. And I always miss those for some reason. They don't pop up. So I encourage you to email me directly and not go through the on-queue messaging system. Anyways, I'll come back to that point. So now you're working on your framework for innovative planning, and then there's a discussion board where you will share that work. That's due next Friday, so you have a full week before you have to post that, and then another week after that to comment on each other's. So let's have a look at what that's going to look like. So at this point, you should have done some reading about innovative curriculum planning. What does that mean? What is curriculum planning? Some of you email me questions about curriculum development more generally. And so I'll put a post up about that. Actually, I responded to someone with a little flow chart. Now, if you look here, this is the activity and the first sort of readings for you. So all the readings are listed here. And there's 5 resources, Part A, Emergent Curriculum Considerations. So these are quite new and innovative, about decolonizing education, queer curriculum, racism in schools. And a lot of these are tie into decolonizing education, which is a great sort of process. Some more on decolonizing. Inclusion, or what are inclusive pedagogies. And then innovation. And so a lot of these are actually videos. So these are videos, but if you look under the course readings, these videos are captured as either the link to the video, but some of them are captured in an associated reading, or in some cases an entire online book about the topic. So I encourage you to look at both. It's a bit overwhelming, but a lot of students find once they start doing this, it's really quite addictive. And so you might find yourself really quite enjoying some of these readings. And the videos themselves are very interesting. Some are a bit longer, but some are only 5 minutes long. So you can watch most of those. I would encourage you to watch all of them, actually. They're quite interesting. Talking about experiential learning. A little bit about Kolb and the experiential learning model. Innovation. Work with new Canadians. Some of you told me that you actually do work with a LINK program or work with immigrants and so forth. So there's a new section there. Experiences of educators and other stakeholders in Surrey and Greater Vancouver. So quite interesting, and I think highly relevant for some of you in the course. So you're going to work through that, and then you're going to come and do a framework. So I really love this framework. I think it's a great challenge for many of you. And some of you get, not you in person, but in past courses, I've taught this course quite a few times. People do get lost in the design of the framework, which is great, but don't forget that try to make it like a functioning framework. And one guiding principle I tell everyone is that could you show this to your students? And people are a bit surprised at that, but imagine if you have this framework that's guiding you and your decisions for how you're going to roll out the curriculum in your classroom. And remember, as I'll show in this flowchart that I'll put up in the announcements, often the curriculum documents and the assessments are given to us. And we have some leeway, but not a lot. We have very little leeway over the curriculum and the learning objectives, a little bit more over the assessments, but we have a whole lot of control over the activities we design to lead our students to the assessments and thus fulfilling the learning objectives. So imagine that you're going to create something for your students to explain to your students, whether they're in grade 2 or in grade 10 or higher education, what's going on in your mind when you come into the class. And one of my favorite texts is called What Great Teachers Do. And one of the things that they say is a great teacher knows why they're doing everything, whether it's the general plan for the year or even the smallest activity. If you're doing an activity in your class that takes 5 minutes, you need to know, why are we doing this? How does it relate to the learning objectives? How is it going to encourage or further or support your students to meet the learning objectives of the course? And so how you do that in an original, an innovative, exciting, engaging, inclusive, decolonized manner, that's your job. That's the focus and your job as a teacher. So try to be original. Again, we want it to look good and easy to follow. Imagine you're going to show it to your students or even to your colleagues, and it's not going to be like overly detailed then. It's not, 10-page document. It's a visual that you're going to share. And imagine you're going to print it on, say, A3 or like a double-sized paper. I forget what they call that in Canada, but over here we call it A3, which is like double a sort of legal-sized piece of paper. And give us a 300 to 500 word explanation about what's going on behind the scenes, why you thought this framework was really good. Again, you're going to revisit this in Module 3. You're going to talk a little about it and try to see how it worked for you. And you're going to come back to it again in Module 4, and I'll talk a bit more about that at that point in time. People have asked me for models. I really don't like to give models because then people follow the model. And so I don't want you to follow the model. I want it to be original. I want it to be innovative. And I want you to really think, how can I take whatever I'm doing and challenge my students with it? And that doesn't matter if your students are in grade 1 or 2, or grade 5 or 6, grade 12. How are you going to challenge them? How are you going to be innovative? How are you going to motivate them? And how are you going to let them know why you're doing what you're doing? How, there's lots of other things you might think about in terms of inclusion, how you're bringing them into the process. And part of that, I think, if you have a design that you can share with your students, then that's very inclusive because the students are then part of the process. And then when they start to say, well, why can't I do this for my assessment? That allows you to bring them in and get their feedback and help you to align what they need to do, or want to do, I should say, with what they need to do to meet an assessment. You have more or less control over that depending on your course, but nevertheless, you do have some input into that. Okay, so that's enough. That's 8 minutes of talking. And so, yeah, I'll be digging into your Module 1 assignments and over the next few days. And thank you very much for listening.